All right, everyone, when Rahm Emanuel, of all people, one of Obama's bosom buddies, comes out to chastise the Democratic Party that he's been part of for pretty much forever and really, really loves, one of the most powerful sort of corrupt insiders within that realm of politics locally, when he comes out and he says he's pissed at the Democratic Party and chastises them, and his chastising makes sense, in fairness, that's not a good sign for the Democratic Party. Now, the DCCC is now leaderless. They've lost their long-term executive director the other day. The DNC is led by a spineless jellyfish. Like, Tom Perez literally looks like an aquatic life form, like an amphibian at some points, the way he looks. Just greasy, like Nate Silver on the 2016 election results live, like the way he looked. That's how Tom Perez looks on an average day. Rahm Emanuel is now saying, well, congrats to the Democratic Party. You pissed off every swing voter in the fucking country. And he seems like he's, mildly annoyed at this. I think more than mildly. He's right. The Obama pragmatism of the neoliberaldom of maybe the mid-2000s has been completely washed away within the Democratic Party. You've got Biden there. He's sort of the non-Obama version of Obama. He's the store brand Obama. He's older, he's white, which doesn't help in the Democratic Party today, and he's peddling the same message. He has the third of the party roughly that has Obama nostalgia behind him. We'll see if he can become the nominee. I mean, he'll lose if he becomes the nominee, almost certainly, but at least he would run a halfway decent campaign. Most of the rest of these people can't do that. You've got to understand, here's how they've pissed off swing voters. Bernie Sanders has openly proclaimed himself to be a socialist for most of his life, his entire adult life, since the 1970s. The Democrats don't care. They think that that's fine. In fact, they're thinking he's too far to the right now. The average swing voter in this country overwhelmingly opposes socialism and will not vote for anyone labeled a socialist. Now, Bernie Sanders is uniquely the only person there that has helpfully labeled himself. He uses that term to describe himself. I'm a democratic socialist. Unlike someone like Warren, she's a socialist, well, she's a neoliberal, but she's pretending to be a socialist. The platforms she has taken up are socialism. She is a socialist now. She doesn't use that term. So in order for Trump to attack someone like Warren, if she becomes the nominee, he has to make sure that voters think of her that way. She won't use the term herself. Be interesting to drive a wedge between her and Sanders. Trump should try this. Drive a wedge between her and Sanders by getting her to say bad things about socialism so that they start fighting each other. Sure that that's in the works somewhere. So Sanders has taken up a term that, what was it, like 75-80% of all independent voters self-described wouldn't vote for someone who was labeled a socialist. It's the majority of Americans, it's almost a majority of Democrats that wouldn't vote for someone like that. Ultimately, they're full of shit, and they'll fall behind whoever the nominee is. Don't get me wrong, the Democratic partisans would back Sanders even if they say they wouldn't. They just don't prefer him. I don't think that his fervor would be nearly as high. Like, he had the turnout, the youth appeal in 2016. He doesn't really have that anymore. It's gone to Harris and Elizabeth Warren and some of the lower tier candidates. A little bit to Buttigieg, I think, because he happens to be gay. To his credit, though, Buttigieg, again, being sane on this issue, he hasn't made it a campaign platform. He downplays it at all possible opportunities. That's the way to go within the Democratic Party at the moment. Be gay, but don't turn it into a campaign platform is basically his way forward. Make it work. So Rahm Emanuel's worried because Biden's unelectably old. That'll be the next video of the day, the fourth video. He's unelectably old. Boring. He can't really campaign. He's having problems in the primaries, and it's not even quite the second debate that happens today. Bernie Sanders uses a term to describe himself that turns off virtually all swing voters, would drive Republican turnout through the fucking roof. Can you imagine the turnout in some of small-town America when a socialist is the Democratic nominee? Can you imagine how high the turnout will be among some of those working and middle-class, especially white voters? It will be astronomical. It will be enormous. It will be far higher than 2016. And Trump will win the popular vote if that happens. That would be a prediction I'd be comfortable making. Bernie Sanders will not be president. Elizabeth Warren, she's taking up an increasingly far left line. She's talking now about reparations and decriminalize illegality and give free health care and education to illegals. Miss Warren, you don't even know how many are in this country already, let alone how many more would physically come if you threw the border open. Some people say it's 15 million. Some people say it's 20. I've heard upwards of 30 or 35 million mentioned. I think it's somewhere in the middle of these numbers. I would have said that even 15 million sounded really high like years ago and pointed this out, but now we don't have any clue anymore. We don't have any solid numbers from most of the Obama era because of catch and release. We don't know how many fucking people are in the United States illegally. We don't have a clue. They're not documented. That's the whole fucking problem. It could be 40 million people. We wouldn't even know. It's like a shadow economy unto itself that's larger than the population of many countries in this world. And Elizabeth Warren wants to be flippant about it, pretend it's not a fucking problem. I think that would turn off the average swing voter. And then when you get into the nitty-gritty of her healthcare plan, it's, oh, yeah, Medicare for basically the same plan as Bernie. They've basically adapted one another's plans. How are you going to pay for it? Because the numbers aren't there. It means middle-class tax increases. It would be so funny to see her get queried by Trump. Hey, you're going to raise taxes on the middle class by 5%. Oh, yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction. Oh, well, the only reason that you have to do that is because you're including 20, 30 million illegals in those plans. Yeah, that's where the cost is coming from. That's why the middle class has to suffer. Tell a middle classer making 50K, 60K a year. They've got their suburban house, they got their two-car garage and their white picket fence. They're living a calm existence on the edge of some city in the United States. They're working a union job. Or they're working like middle management or something, middle classer. You know, maybe they're a dink, double income, no kids, or whatever. They're yuppie, making decent money. Tell them that they need to pay 5, 10, 15% more in taxes because there are people that are in the country that they've been told are illegally here that need health care and education and their kids need busing and housing. Tell them that they need to pay that money and see how many of them vote for you. The problem is that there's no solution from the left on this problem because there would be such mass outrage if they implemented such a plan. Even if you think it's the right thing to do, it simply can't be implemented. There'd probably be riots. You'd probably be facing insurrection in certain parts of the country if that were to happen. That's not a joke. Rahm Emanuel is a long-term Chicago Obamaite liberal. He's a business liberal with pragmatism in mind. He is warning the Democratic Party, as many people have for years now, that you have lurched so far to the left that you cannot possibly think that your eventual nominee is going to be palatable to swing voters. I'm telling you, it's going to be a little bit like 1984, I think, where Reagan at the time was stumbling along. He wasn't actually that popular for a while. He had lost a lot of his muster and was in the 40s, I believe, in popularity. But the Democrats chose someone to run against him, Mondale, who ultimately was just a weak fucking candidate. And no offense to Mondale, because he seemed like a funny guy, an okay guy by modern Democrat standards. It's not hard to imagine. But yeah, he did a poor job, and Reagan won in a landslide. And I think it trickled down to the House and Senate. Well, they had been wiped out in the previous midterms. There's a thing on it on TV just last night about that particular midterm. Crushing a blow it was to the Republicans. And people were saying the same thing they're saying now. Well, Republicans will never recover. Well, yeah, they say that every time that there's a midterm, and midterms almost always go against the incumbent party because they're running against a president who, by and large, in the first 2 years hasn't accomplished much. Most presidents don't do much in their first 2 years. They're still getting used to the job. Give Trump a second term, and a lot of these problems will be solved because you'll finally have binding legislation solving the border crisis, addressing the issue of illegals. Maybe that means an extension of DACA, amnesty for certain groups of people. It has to include legal immigration reform to make it easier. It's got to be made more streamlined. We're gobbling up unnecessary resources. That we don't need. Bureaucracy is so heavily involved in the process. It's like you don't even have enough money to deal with the border. He got the border crossings upgraded. That was good. He's retrofitted existing border, which is good. We need to complete the barrier. And the Democrats now are campaigning on the idea that that's somehow has to do with race. It's racist to, guard your country or something like that. Rahm Emanuel's telling him that that's not pragmatic. Rahm Emanuel is probably, I know he's a crook, but he's a really strategically smart crook. He's one of the engineers of sort of the Obama-style liberalism. This may be why Obama's sitting it out. He doesn't want to come in, weigh in, say, hey, I endorse Joe Biden and get called like a racist or something. He's probably worried, yeah, they'll call me a Nazi if I back Biden, because he's not talking about opening the border and free shit for everyone. He's actually being pragmatic. Maybe that's why Obama hasn't weighed in yet. Maybe it's not because he doubts Biden. Maybe it's because he doubts the rest of the Democrats. Now that would be something. That's about all. Peace out.